The Christmas candles were still burning when my mother raised her glass and gave me that thin, satisfied smile she'd been saving for months. "We closed on your grandmother's place," she said, voice butter smooth. "The money is finally where it belongs. You were never in the will anyway, sweetheart." My sister Jenna snorted into her napkin. "Good," she said. "Eleanor would have just wasted it on that dusty little office." 12 relatives turned to watch me break. I didn't. None of them knew the deed to that farmhouse already carried a name, and that name was sitting in a leather folder inside my purse. In 60 seconds, Christmas dinner was about to become the quietest room in Millbrook. Welcome back to Tranquil Drama Stories, where ordinary people face impossible families and answer with quiet steel instead of shouting. I'm Clara Bennett. I'm 32, and I keep books for the farms around Millbrook. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. To explain how I ended up at that table holding a deed, I have to go back almost a year, to a frozen February afternoon when the call came. My grandmother Eleanor had taken a bad turn in the night. I was the one they called Always Me. Not my mother Patricia, who lived 20 minutes across town. Not my sister Jenna, who lived even closer. Me. Because for 7 years, I'd been the one driving out to the old house on Willow Creek Road with her medication, her tax forms, her groceries, and a thermos of coffee for the long mornings. I found Eleanor propped up in her bed, smaller than I remembered, but her eyes still sharp. She held my hand a long time without speaking. Then she reached into the nightstand drawer and pressed a tiny brass key into my palm. It opened the old recipe tin she'd kept on the kitchen shelf since before I was born. "When the time comes," she said, "you'll know where to look." I asked what she meant. She just patted my hand and told me to drink my coffee before it went cold. I tucked the key into my coat and didn't think much of it. I was wrong about a lot of things that year. That farmhouse was the only place I ever felt like I belonged. Summers, I belonged to Eleanor. She taught me to snap beans on the porch and read a feed bill so the co-op couldn't pad it. She'd spread the farm's receipts across the kitchen table and let me add the columns out loud. "Numbers don't lie, Clara," she'd say. "People do. So you learn the numbers." That kitchen is where I decided what I'd become. I opened Bennett Bookkeeping at 22 in a rented room above the hardware store. My mother thought it was beneath us. Jenna thought it was boring. Eleanor thought it was the finest thing anyone in our family had ever done. While I drove out there every week, my mother visited twice a year, mostly to ask about the land's value. Jenna came for holidays and left early. One autumn evening, Eleanor looked at the house, then at me, and said it plain. "This place goes to the one who stayed." I laughed it off. She didn't argue. She just smiled the way she did when she knew something I didn't, and went back to her tomatoes. Eleanor passed 3 days after she gave me that key. I planned the funeral alone, picked the hymns, ordered the flowers, wrote the obituary. My mother Patricia wore black and accepted condolences like a queen. My father Richard stood beside her, silent as furniture. Jenna spent the reception on her phone. At the reception, before the casseroles were cold, my mother leaned over and asked what I thought the farmhouse would fetch. Jenna drifted through the rooms photographing the hutch, the quilts, the grandfather clock, murmuring prices under her breath. Nobody asked who would feed Eleanor's old barn cat. I stood in the kitchen by the tin recipe box, the one the key belonged to, and felt something cold settle in my chest. I told myself it was grief. I told myself families get strange around death. The hardest part, I thought, was behind me. I was wrong. The hardest part started with a phone call about a will. In April, my cousin Carl called a family meeting. Carl runs a tax and title shop 2 towns over and always smells faintly of cigarettes and cheap cologne. The meeting wasn't at a lawyer's office. It was at my parents' kitchen table with a coffee cake and a folder. Carl put on his reading glasses and announced that Eleanor had left everything: the house, the land, the accounts, to my mother. "The devoted daughter-in-law," he read, "who cared for me in my final years." My mother dabbed her eyes. Jenna squeezed her hand. "My name was not in the document anywhere." "You were never in the will, honey," my mother said, and the corner of her mouth curled. I sat very still, but 2 things were screaming inside me. First, devoted daughter-in-law was a phrase Eleanor would have rather choked on than written. Second, the signature was too steady. The Eleanor the hard buried couldn't hold a spoon those last weeks, let alone sign her name cleanly. And the date typed at the bottom said the will was made just 3 weeks before she died. I thanked Carl, took a slice of coffee cake I didn't eat, and drove back to my office. Here's the thing about being the family bookkeeper. People assume you only count what they hand you. They forget you also notice what's missing. 2 years earlier, I'd driven Eleanor to an attorney's office in the county seat. She'd made me wait in the lobby. She came out with a sealed envelope and a business card. I never saw the documents, but I knew they existed. So how did a will drafted by a real estate attorney 2 years ago become a will notarized by Carl 3 weeks before she died? Eleanor hadn't left that house in 6 months. I called Carl the next morning and asked when exactly she'd signed it. He got vague fast. She had me come by. Last-minute change of heart. I asked who witnessed it. He said he'd have to check his file. A notary who has to check whether anyone witnessed a will is a notary telling you something. That's when I remembered the business card. Helen Morrow, estate law. Before I called her, I did the reasonable thing. I asked my own family for the truth. I drove to my parents' house and asked to see the actual probate filing. My mother's face changed. "Why would you need that?" she said. That's when she reached for the weapon she'd used my whole life. She made herself the victim. "Your grandmother is barely in the ground, and you're already fighting about money." Jenna appeared in the doorway right on cue. "Don't make this ugly, Clara. It's so like you to make everything about you." My father studied the wallpaper. I looked at the three of them and understood something I should have understood years ago. They had a plan, and that plan required me quiet and ashamed and gone. So I went quiet, but not the way they wanted. I called Helen Morrow. Her assistant put me through the moment I said my grandmother's name. Helen was careful on the phone and asked me to come in person. In the meantime, I gathered facts. The estate was moving fast. My mother had petitioned the court as executor under an informal probate, the kind that sails through when nobody objects. The required notice had gone to an old address, reaching me late. On paper, Carl's document looked clean. The farmhouse and land were headed to a public auction. I drove out to Willow Creek Road that evening and parked at the end of the gravel drive. The house sat in the blue dusk, Eleanor's porch swing still hanging crooked. I thought about strangers walking those rooms. I thought about someone tearing out her garden, and I made myself a promise. Whatever the law eventually said about that forged signature, the house would be sold before I could prove it. I couldn't stop the sale, but there was nothing stopping me from being the one who bought it. If you've ever watched something precious slip toward people who never deserved it, you know the quiet that fell over me. It wasn't defeat, it was a decision. Hit subscribe so the rest of this story finds you. People expect rage to look loud. Mine looked like a legal pad. I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. Down one side, what I knew, the will was fake. The sale was going through anyway. My family was spending money they hadn't received. Down the other side, what I could control, my own moves. Made cleanly, legally, in the right order. Then I found the word that changed everything. Auction. The estate wasn't doing a private sale. To prove fairness, the property was headed to a public auction open to anyone with the funds and the nerve to raise a paddle. My mother thought she was selling to some faceless investor. She had no idea the auction floor would be open to me too. Helen Morrow's office smelled like old paper and strong coffee. She was trim, in her late 50s, with reading glasses on a chain. I put my license on her desk. She looked at it, then at me, and something in her shoulders eased. "You look like her," she said. 2 years earlier, my grandmother had come to her deliberate and clear-headed and drafted a will signed, witnessed by 2 staff members, notarized properly. In it, Eleanor left the farmhouse and the surrounding 10 acres to me. "To Clara, the one who stayed," Helen read aloud. I had to look at the window for a moment. Then I told her about Carl's version, about the steady signature on a dying woman. Helen's expression went flat and professional. "If that document is what you suspect," she said, "then the will currently in probate is fraudulent, and everything done under it can be challenged. The only problem, the original signed copy of the real will, was in Eleanor's safe deposit box at Millbrook Savings Bank, and access required the key and documentation Eleanor had set aside. A key, A box. I remembered the cold tin of a recipe tin. The next morning, I drove to the farmhouse one last time. The estate company hadn't changed the locks yet. I let myself in with the old backdoor key. The smell hit me first: lavender, wood smoke, and her. I went straight to the kitchen shelf, pulled down the tin recipe box, and used the tiny key from my coat pocket. Inside, beneath index cards stained with decades of gravy and pie, I found two things. First, a flat brass key in an envelope marked Millbrook Savings, Box 144. Second, a sealed letter with my name on the front, in Eleanor's looping cursive. I wasn't ready to read it yet. I slipped it into my bag and carried it for 3 days. I think I knew whatever she'd written would ask something of me, and I wanted to be strong enough to do it first. So I built the thing that would let me fight. I formed a company, Willow Creek Holdings, LLC, not for secrecy, but because I needed to bid on that house without my mother seeing my name and driving up the price out of spite. I did everything above board. On public records, only the company name would appear. The law still required me to report myself as the true owner privately, which I did. But my family, scanning the auction paperwork, would just see a company they'd never heard of. Then came the harder part: money. The farmhouse and 10 acres had been appraised around $215,000. I'd been careful for a decade. I had savings in the business, a small inheritance from my grandfather I'd never touched, and I qualified for a mortgage in the company's name. I stress-tested the numbers for 2 nights. I could do it barely, but cleanly. There was one more cold piece of arithmetic. My mother needed cash fast, which meant she'd set the reserve price low to guarantee a quick sale. A low reserve is a door left open. I intended to walk through it. Right in the middle of that planning, Jenna called to gloat. She thought she was sharing good news. She'd put a deposit down on a brand new SUV loaded. 3rd row, the works. She was paying for it, she explained, out of her share of Grandma's estate. Money that hadn't even cleared yet. I asked mildly whether that was wise before the sale closed. And that's when she said it. Breezy as if it cost her nothing. Oh, come on. If Grandma had left it to you, you'd just waste it on that little office. There it was again. I felt the old urge to defend myself. I didn't. I'd finally learned that you don't explain your worth to people who've already decided you don't have any. We'll see, I said. There was a little pause on the line, like she expected more of a fight. Then she changed the subject to upholstery. After we hung up, I let myself smile just a little, in the privacy of my own kitchen. The night before I met Helen to plan the bank box, I finally opened Eleanor's letter. Her handwriting filled 2 pages. She told me she knew. She knew my mother was drowning in debt, the second mortgage, the failed ventures. She knew that when she was gone, there would be hands reaching for the house before the flowers wilted. Your mother loves money the way some people love whiskey, she wrote, and she will tell herself any story to get it. Then she told me what she'd done. The real will in the bank box. The house left to me on purpose. And then the line I've read so many times I could recite it in my sleep. If they ever tell you you were never in my will, you put this letter on the table and let the paper speak. Don't fight them with shouting, Clara. Numbers are your strength. Quiet is your strength. The house goes to the one who stayed. That's you. It was always you. I sat there a long time. Then I cried, the ugly, hiccuping kind. After, I folded the letter back along its worn creases and put it somewhere safe. I wasn't just buying back a house. I was carrying out the last clear instruction of the only person who ever believed in me. 2 days later, Helen and I opened box 114. Eleanor had added me as a co-lessee years earlier, so the box never froze. Inside was the executed original of her real will, signatures and seals intact. Helen laid it beside Carl's version and pointed out the differences. The date, the witness lines naming 2 people no one could locate, the signature that looked like a careful imitation. A genuine signature from a sick woman wobbles, she said. This one marches. She explained we could file to reopen probate, but that road was slow months, maybe a year. Meanwhile, the auction would happen on schedule, so we'd fight on 2 fronts. I'd form the company, buy the house clean at auction, then pursue the fraud case. Helen took off her glasses, looked at me for a long moment, and almost smiled. "Your grandmother," she said, "would have liked that very much." The auction was held on a cold October morning in the county building. I didn't go in person. I sent a calm associate from Helen's office to represent Willow Creek Holdings, with my hard limit written on a card in his pocket. I sat in my car in the parking lot, phone in hand, heart in my throat. My mother and Jenna had gone inside, dressed up, already celebrating. Bidding opened low, just as I'd predicted. It climbed a local farmer, an investor from the city, and the quiet man in the good suit who kept nodding. At $238,000, the gavel came down. My phone buzzed. "Sold to your company. Congratulations, Miss Bennett." I pressed my hand over my mouth and made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. My mother walked out minutes later, beaming, complaining to Jenna about that pushy company that bid them up. She passed within 30 feet of my car and never looked over. She had no idea she'd just sold her mother-in-law's house back to the granddaughter she swore was never in the will. I sat in my office above the hardware store the night the funds cleared. The new deed under my lamp. Willow Creek Holdings, LLC, my company. My house. My grandmother's house. Back where it belonged. I did not feel triumphant that night. I felt tired and sad, and a strange tenderness for the woman who raised me, who'd seen this whole thing coming and armed me from beyond the grave. The triumph would come later. That night was just quiet. The invitation arrived in early December. My mother's voice sweet as pie. She wanted me at Christmas dinner. Not because she missed me, because she needed theater. Nothing said we've moved on. Nothing to see here like the prodigal bookkeeper at the holiday table. She also wanted to be sure I wasn't asking questions about the estate. "You'll come, won't you?" she said. "It's Christmas. Let's put all this behind us." Then she added, "And let's not have any drama about the house. You were never in the will, remember? Don't go ruining everyone's Christmas." I looked out my office window at the lights strung over Main Street, thought about Helen's petition drafted and ready to go after the holiday, and said, "I'll be there. What can I bring?" She told me just myself. I told her I'd bring myself and the slim leather folder that would be tucked beside the cranberry sauce. I spent the next week preparing. Part of me wanted to do it privately, to let Helen's lawsuit land quietly in January. But they had shamed me in public, at the will reading, at the funeral, in front of an audience, because an audience made it stick. So the truth deserved the same room the lies had used. I reread Eleanor's letter. Let the paper speak. I wasn't going to scream or throw wine. I was going to sit at that table, calm as a pond in winter, and set 3 documents down in order. The night before Christmas Eve, I laid them out. First, a copy of the deed, Willow Creek Holdings, owner of record. Second, the conformed copy of Eleanor's real will, with Helen's seal, leaving the farmhouse to me. Third, Eleanor's letter in her own hand. 3 pages, 1 quiet sentence to go with them. I slid them into the leather folder and closed it. Once I set this down, there was no going back to being the daughter who kept the peace. I'd be the daughter who told the truth, and they would never forgive me. Some things are worth not being forgiven for. On Christmas Eve, my father did something he'd never done. He came to see me. He stood in my office doorway, hat in his hands, looking older than I'd ever seen him. There were papers I signed as part of the probate he started. I didn't read them close. Carl put them in front of me. Your mother said it was just formalities. I knew something wasn't right about it. I signed anyway. He waited for me to absolve him. I didn't. I know you did, Dad, I said. He flinched, nodded once, and walked back down the stairs. I watched his taillights disappear and thought, tomorrow, you'll learn the rest. Christmas Day. I dressed in a plain sweater Eleanor would have approved of, and drove across town. The folder sat on the passenger seat. I parked behind Jenna's enormous new SUV and walked up the path, already hearing them laughing inside. The dining room was warm, the good china out, candles lit. My mother presided at the head, glowing. She seated me on her right, the place of honor, so everyone could see how gracious she was being to the difficult daughter. I let her. I complimented the table, passed the rolls, admired the tree. Inside, I was as still as I've ever been. Between the main course and dessert, my mother tapped her glass. I just want to say what a hard year it's been, she began. But we got through it together, and I'm happy to share that we finally closed the sale of Mother Vance's house. We can all move forward now. Glasses lifted. Then her eyes slid to me, and the smirk came out. I know that's been a sore spot for some, she said, swirling her wine. But honestly, sweetheart, you were never in the will. There's no shame in it. Grandma just knew who'd handle things responsibly. A few uncomfortable chuckles. Jenna laughed and raised her own glass. Don't feel bad, Clara. Honestly, it's for the best. You'd just have wasted it. I set down my fork. I didn't reach for my folder yet. I let a small silence stretch. Then I picked up my wine, took one unhurried sip, and set the glass down. Can I ask who you sold it to? I said. My mother blinked. Some company. Willow Creek Holdings, I think. An investment outfit. They bid us up nicely. She smiled around the table. Willow Creek Holdings, I repeated. I reached into my purse and brought out the leather folder. I opened it and took out the first page. This is the deed to Grandma's house, I said, and laid it in the center of the table, turned so she could read it. Her eyes caught on the owner's name. I took out the second page. This is Grandma's real will, drafted 2 years ago. Signed, witnessed, and notarized properly. It leaves the farmhouse and 10 acres to me by name. The color was leaving my mother's face. Jenna leaned in and went silent. Carl pushed his chair back. I took out the third page and held it a moment. And this is the letter she left me, the one that told me exactly what you'd do. The table had gone so quiet I could hear the candles. I folded my hands. Cool, I said. Voice level as a countertop. I hope you enjoy the cash. Since I'm the one who bought it. The words landed soft and detonated slow. Willow Creek Holdings is mine. I formed it. I bid on it. The money you all spent this fall, the mortgage, the SUV, the vacation, that was my money. I bought Grandma's house back from you. And not one of you noticed. My mother half stood, wine tipping across the white cloth. That's a lie, she said. Carl, tell her that will isn't real. But Carl was already on his feet, gray as ash, backing toward the door. I didn't raise my voice. I put one hand flat on Eleanor's letter. You said I was never in the will, I said. You were right. Because the one I was in, you replaced. And I have the original. The room went silent, the deep, ringing silence of 12 people understanding the same thing at once. Jenna's face had gone the color of the tablecloth as she did the arithmetic. Her SUV, bought with money that was about to be clawed back. My father shut his eyes. I looked at my sister, who had laughed and said I'd waste it, and gave her the only answer that mattered. Turns out, I didn't waste it, I said quietly. I bought back the only thing in this family that was ever worth keeping. Somewhere in the kitchen, the oven timer went off for the second pie. Nobody got up. I didn't stay for dessert. I gathered my 3 pages, thanked my mother for dinner with a courtesy that landed harder than any insult, and drove home through the Christmas lights with my hands steady on the wheel. The rest happened the way Helen said it would, only faster. She filed the petition the first business day after the holiday. The court took the forgery evidence seriously. Carl's notary commission came under review. Facing losing his license, he stopped pretending. The fraudulent will crumbled. The court reopened the estate under Eleanor's real will. My purchase at auction stood. I'd bought the property at arm's length. In good faith. What got unwound was the money. The family had to return the cash they'd spent. And now my mother owed back tens of thousands she'd already used to patch her hidden debts. Jenna had to sell the SUV to scrape together her share. My father moved into the spare room. I took no joy in the hard parts, but I took no responsibility for them either. That spring, I fixed the crooked porch swing and turned the soil in Eleanor's garden with my own hands. Her old neighbor, Mr. Keller, brought by tomato starts and didn't say much, which was its own kind of blessing. I left the door open for my father with one condition. It's open when you're ready, to be honest. He hasn't come yet. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. Either way, the garden's in, and the swing creaks the way it always did. Here's what I learned sitting in that quiet house. Family can vote you out of the story all they want. but the people who actually stay, they're the ones who get to keep the house. And the name. And the truth. If you've ever been the one who stayed while others showed up only to collect, then this story was for you. So do one quiet thing this week. Check the paperwork on the things that matter, the deeds, the wills, the promises gently and early, long before you ever have to raise your voice. Comment the one who stayed if you made it to the end with me. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Tranquil Drama Stories, because there's always another family, another table, and another truth waiting to be set down.